Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This happened last night, and I'm now ready to share what went down. I'm not quite sure if it qualifies as pro, but it definitely isn't petty revenge. I work as a professional truck driver. Across America's highways, truck stops have designated pay-to-park sections, usually covering about 10 to 20% of the lot marked as reserved. These spots cost between $15 and $25. At this particular truck stop in Kansas City, parking was $17, which is a decent deal for a guaranteed spot. The reservation runs for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time until 3 p.m. the next day. Knowing I had a late-night delivery, I arrived around 3:30 p.m. and paid for a reserved spot. I approached Sarah, the manager on duty. "Hey, I've got a delivery later tonight," I explained. "I'll be back once it's done, but I'll definitely clear out before tomorrow afternoon." Sarah nodded, typing into her computer. "No problem at all. I'll mark the spot as sold when you leave so nobody else can reserve it. Just let us know when you return." At 11:15 p.m., I headed out for my delivery. The warehouse was running behind schedule, and I didn't get out until 2:30 a.m. Exhausted, I drove back to the truck stop only to discover all the reserved parking spaces were occupied. I immediately called the front desk. "This is Sarah. How can I help?" "Hi, Sarah. It's the driver from earlier. Someone's taken my reserved spot. Actually, all the reserved spots are full." "Hold on, I'll send Jake out to check the trucks." The culprit wasn't hard to spot. A truck from Swift Transportation with their distinctive orange trailer. Jake, the night employee, started banging on the truck's door. From my position in the fuel island, where Sarah had told me to wait, I had a clear view of the scene. The driver yanked open his door, clutching a Heineken in one hand and what was clearly drug paraphernalia in the other. Jake maintained his professional tone. "Sir, you're parked in a reserved spot. You need to move your vehicle immediately." "Who the hell are you to tell me where I can park?" the driver slurred, swaying slightly. "This is private property. Move your truck, or we'll have to involve law enforcement and a towing company." The driver's face turned red. "Get lost!" he shouted, slamming the door in Jake's face. Jake radioed Sarah, who called the police and a towing company. The police arrived first, and that's when things got interesting. Having worked for Swift before, I knew their strict policies. No alcohol in the cab, no drugs, and absolutely no firearms, especially loaded ones. This driver had hit the trifecta of violations, plus some extra illegal substances thrown in for good measure. As they led him away in handcuffs, I called Swift's safety director. "Ma'am, one of your trucks is about to be impounded and your driver's been arrested. You might want to send someone down here." "Thank you for letting us know," she replied firmly. "He's definitely terminated. We have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior." Watching the tow truck haul away the Swift rig, I couldn't help but think that some people really need to learn the hard way. The next one is an entitled people's story. I inherited my lakefront property from my grandfather 5 years ago. It's a beautiful piece of land with 200 feet of shoreline, mostly wooded except for a small clearing where I built my cabin. The property had been in our family for 3 generations, and I had all the deeds and surveys properly filed. My neighbor Tom moved in 2 years ago, buying the adjacent lot. At first, he seemed friendly enough, though he kept making comments about how lucky I was to have waterfront access. His property was set further back from the lake, with just a sliver of water view between the trees. Everything changed last spring when I started building a dock. Tom came storming over one Saturday morning while I was laying out the foundation. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "Building a dock. Got all my permits approved last month." "You can't build there. That's my waterfront." I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "Tom, this has been my family's property for over 50 years. I have all the documentation." "Well, my realtor told me this lot came with lake access. I'm not letting you block my water rights." I showed him the property survey, but he dismissed it as outdated. For the next few weeks, he kept coming over to argue about the property line. I finally told him to have his own survey done if he didn't believe mine. Instead of doing that, he took things to a whole new level. I came home from work one day to find a construction crew tearing down trees near my shoreline. They had already cleared about 30 feet of my property and were marking spots for foundation posts. I immediately called the police and my lawyer. While waiting for them, I approached the crew foreman. "Who authorized this work?" He showed me a contract signed by Tom, claiming ownership of the entire shoreline. The document looked official, but something seemed off about it. The property description didn't match county records. The police arrived first. They ordered the crew to stop work while they sorted things out. Tom came running over, waving his paperwork and yelling about his water rights. The officers quickly realized this was a civil matter, but they documented the property damage and trespassing. My lawyer arrived next and immediately spotted problems with Tom's documentation. The property description had been altered from the original deed, and the lot numbers didn't match county records. He suspected Tom had modified his property documents to claim my waterfront. We filed for an emergency injunction to prevent further damage while pursuing legal action. During discovery, emails emerged between Tom and his realtor showing they knew exactly where his property ended, well short of the water line. Tom had deliberately falsified documents to steal my land. The case went to court 3 months later. Tom tried claiming adverse possession, arguing that previous owners had allowed his property access to the lake. But he couldn't provide any evidence, and several longtime neighbors testified that the property line had been clear for decades. The judge was not amused. Not only did Tom lose the case, but he was charged with filing falsified property documents, a felony in our state. He ended up with 2 years probation, had to pay for all the damage to my property, and cover my legal fees. The construction company also faced consequences for not properly verifying property ownership before starting work. They settled out of court, paying for complete restoration of my shoreline and damaged trees. Tom put his house up for sale a month later. I heard through neighbors that his wife was divorcing him over the whole mess. Apparently, he had spent their savings on the legal battle without telling her. I finally finished my dock this summer. It's exactly where I planned it, and I made sure the property line markers are clearly visible from both land and water. The new neighbors who bought Tom's place are actually fantastic. They ask permission before even putting up a bird feeder near the property line. Sometimes when I'm sitting on my dock watching the sunset, I think about how Tom's entitlement and greed cost him everything. He could have just enjoyed his partial lake view and been a good neighbor. Instead, he tried to steal what wasn't his and lost it all. Looking back, I'm glad I had all my documentation in order and acted quickly when he sent in the construction crew. Standing up to a bully isn't easy, but protecting your property rights is worth the fight. I hope my story helps others dealing with entitled neighbors trying to claim land that isn't theirs. The next one is a petty revenge story. First of all, sorry if my English is not perfect. It is not my native language. This happened several years ago. I was more or less 22 years M, and I still was living in my father's house. We owned 3 car parking slots on the building private parking area. Mine was literally in front of the stairs, probably the best one. We had recently had a new neighbor, M45, and my father was really happy with him because he was from great families, and in theory he had a great education, and every one of us liked him. During the day I would go to the university, but sometimes I would come sooner to home to lunch, or because I did not have more classes. And I would find this neighbor parking his car in my parking slot. He had his own parking slots, but was not using them because he preferred mine since it was closer to the building steps. I don't know. The first 3 or 4 times this happened, I talked with him, and in each situation he would say he was sorry, very politely, and he would never do it again. But after some days there he was. I asked my father to talk with him, and it was the same. It was always my parking slot and not my father's or my sister. One day, in the middle of the working week, I was arriving home, really pissed off about something I do not remember, probably university stuff. I got home and there he is on my parking slot once again. For me, it was enough. So I parked my car behind him, and with that, he couldn't remove his car before I removed mine. I went directly home and start playing League of Legends non-stop. After some time, guess who rings the door because someone needed to leave immediately and had my car blocking him? My sister opened the door for our neighbor, and when he asks if I can remove my car, my sister said to him I was in an important call with 4 international people and he had to wait for it. She didn't lie. He waited for 48 minutes. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened a while ago. At that time I was currently 14 years old, I think. I was in a family vacation with my best friend. In this trip, we were supposed to stay 5 days in the lake and then come back home. My mom is, most of the time, a mayor a-hole, so I was not surprised when she started having a bad attitude with me. After being 3 days on this trip, I was exhausted. I had spent all day on the lake and was really tired. All I wanted to do was to lay down in the camping tent and sleep the day away. My mom decided that this was a great time to ask me for help. She wanted me to carry my brother to the lake, bathe him, and bring him back to her. He was around a year old or so. Obviously, I was so out of myself that I told her no, and that she could do it herself. There was around a 10 minutes walk to the lake. She started screaming at me as to how bad of a sister and child I must be, 'cause I never helped her, and yada yada. Then after screaming at me for half an hour, she asked me if now I was ready to help her. I responded no again, and that she hadn't gone out of the van all day, and that she must have been filled with enough energy to do it. Then she goes to scream at my dad to pack things up, take away my phone from me, and that I was grounded till she said so. Also, she made me go alone with her in the car ride. We went with 2 cars because we didn't fit, and proceeded to lecture me the 2 hours back home about respect, how I should behave, that I should help around more in the house and to have more family time, and also that I could be doing other things and to get a hobby because for her I was apparently all the day on my phone. Cue to the malicious compliance, I decided that if she wanted all that, then I could manage. We arrived home at around 11 p.m. and she went to sleep at 3 a.m. for some reason. At 9 a.m., I was up, and I decided that my new hobby was to play the flute at first thing on the morning. I proceeded to play the flute so bad and loud that my brother started crying. I was playing the flute on the yard, and they were on their room, all the way across on the house and with their windows closed. She couldn't tell me anything because when she came to the yard to tell me off, but I was so polite and gave perfect reason that I was far, and I was getting a new hobby as she had told me. The house stayed squeaky clean for 2 weeks, but every day I made a point to go to sleep before everyone, so that every day I woke up a little bit earlier and ready to blast my flute each day for around 1h till the couldn't bear it anymore. I think I even reached playing the flute at 5 a.m. By the end of 2 weeks, the punishment wasn't over, but I was slowly driving my mom insane by messing with her sleep schedule, and I knew that. I also started lecturing my parents because they didn't have proper manners, and they couldn't tell me nothing because they knew I was right. I spent all the day stuck to either my mom or dad and talked their ear off and made everyone watch those horrible educational films no one likes, made them participate in family bonding time like making cookies, proceeded to leave as much of a mess as I could, and when they told me to clean it, sorry, but I already cleaned the house today, could you do it? I was eating their brains, their sanity, and their free time, either by nagging them or by cautiously waking my brother up, but doing it in a quiet way so that they wouldn't find out and having them to deal with a baby all day long. The last day, around 2 weeks and a half, my mom was so fed up that she gave me the phone back. It has been around 2 or 3 years since then, and I haven't been grounded since then. The next one is an entitled people story. Hello. My previous job had me working as a food service worker in a bakery. I worked at a certain berry-themed amusement park, and I worked there for about 2 years before quitting a few months back for a job that pays me better. I liked the job for the most part. Most people were cool, and I really only encountered difficult people during busy seasons, and my co-workers, with the exception of 2 who hated me, had my during these encounters. We were also right next to the park's security office. The way my location was set up was a little bit weird and specific. It was a bakery with 3 massive display cases separating us as the employees from the customers, 2 registers between the display cases and our soda machine, and a little nook off to the side. In this nook, there were 3 machines, a massive coffee pot, a hot chocolate machine that was just a little broken and always messy despite my best efforts to keep it clean, and a rundown little latte machine. There's a counter right next to this machine where the coffees and stuff would be called out. There was also 2 registers set up outside at this time because it was busy season, and this was the most efficient way for us as employees to serve customers. There was almost always 1 or 2 people on the register outside, and this time it was my team lead, basically a mini manager, who really liked me because I trained him. This happened on my last day there. This park has a drink program where anybody with the annual pass could pay an extra $10 or so and redeem a free fountain drink every 15 minutes. People who weren't pass holders also could get the drink program by buying a souvenir bottle for like $30 that they could use throughout the day and reactivate if they came on a different day. A lot of people with this drink program tended to feel like they didn't need to wait in lines for their drink redemption, and it was common for them to walk up to the other side of the counter and ask for their refill. And usually, they were annoyed but never malicious when I or one of my coworkers told them that they unfortunately had to wait in line for drinks, as many people in line were also just getting drinks. Not this lady, though. Ooh, no. This lady was out for blood, and she must have sensed that I was in a good mood. It was the last hour and a half of my final shift. Elle was busy cleaning up a couple of messes that had been made throughout the day by the hot chocolate and latte machines, and was simultaneously talking to my managers and other leads about my plans for the future, about where I pick up my last check, etc., etc. Suddenly, I heard somebody unscrewing the lids off their cups and pushing them towards me. This woman was a little taller than me, I'm 5'3", had sunglasses and a baseball cap on, and didn't look very pleasant. You develop a 6th sense for difficult people when working for theme parks, you see. She had 2 souvenir bottles on the counter and was holding them out to me. I smiled at her and told her, "Oh, I'm sorry, you actually have to wait in line to get refills? I know it's inconvenient, but it's park policy." She scoffed at me and said, "I'm just getting drinks." and I reiterated that she still had to wait in line, adding that even though the line was really long right now, there were other people in it who were also just getting drinks. So she disappears, and I assume that she'd gone to wait in the admittedly pretty long line. In that time, I finished cleaning the machines and returned to helping customers in line with my other coworkers. About 5 minutes pass, and this lady comes storming back in, cutting the line again and walking up to the register. She pointed at me and said, "You. It's important to note here that I am mixed race, but look white, and am usually perceived as white, because TBH, I didn't go outside much at this time and have only recently started getting my darker color back. This woman was black, and most of my coworkers are POC. I'm also autistic with low support needs. I'm just a little awkward and anxious, fidgety, and have trouble making eye contact despite my best efforts, so I'm sure that had something to do with why this lady locked onto me and not my other neurotypical coworkers. She kept yelling at me, saying, 'You're a racist little bitch, aren't you? You lied to me because I'm black. I wasted all that time in line and your manager told me that you lied to me. You did this because I'm black, didn't you?' I, as any reasonable person would be, was startled. I had been trained for conflicts like this because I was supposed to be a team lead before management changed, and I was usually the person to deal with customers like her for that exact reason. This was partially why I quit. Regardless, this was my first time being cussed at by a customer in a malicious way. I said, 'I'm sorry about that, but I didn't lie to you. I can get you your drinks, though.' So, she basically threw her cups at me and said, 'I want Coke and Diet Coke.' I gave her those, and handed her back the cups one by one, telling her which was which. She promptly scoffed and said, 'You didn't put them in the right cups. Are you stupid?' And she pushed the cups back at me. I had enough at that point and asked one of my friends to take over for me as I went to go talk to my lead outside. I went out there and told him about the lady, and he informed me that he did not, in fact, tell her to cut the line. He said that he scanned her drink pass and told her to just wait for one of us behind the counter to help her, and we'd get to her as soon as possible. I told him about her insults to me, and just like that, boom, she appeared behind me. This woman had followed me outside and started berating me in front of my lead and hundreds of customers, one again calling me a racist little bitch and saying that I hated black people, that I was a lazy piece of shit, that I didn't know how to do my job, and that I had no right to be standing there and doing fuck all when the line was out the door. My lead stood up for me, and I'd finally just told her, "It's my last day, you can't talk to me that way," and walked away. She didn't follow me again, and even though I had kept my cool for the entirety of the interaction, it hit me all at once and I had a small meltdown in the bakery's storage room. My coworkers, now friends, were very understanding and let me take my time, and thankfully this woman did not ruin my day. I don't miss that job. Seriously, man, if you're gonna go to a theme park, please be nice to the workers. I can tell you from experience that most parks are single-handedly run by teenagers, and unless it's a big park like the one I currently work at, management is in their early to mid-20s and corporate doesn't care about us. Be nice, please. The next one is an entitled parent's story. My fiancé and I had plans to get married in January of this year, but his visa got denied. It's been so heartbroken and hard on us. We have been apart since June of 2023, and we thought the long distance has ended. But I guess the universe had other plans for us because now we're applying for a marriage visa, and that will take 2 years for him to come back to the US, so now we have plans to get married in his home country of South Korea in December and go to Japan for our honeymoon. As a side note, I'm very lucky with the job I have. I get a lot of vacation time and I can go to South Korea 3 times a year. I'm lucky in that sense. I would be getting married in South Korea alone due to my mom not wanting to make the trip because she's phobic of flying and my dad not caring to come. When I say get married, I just mean the legal part of it, that we're legally married. There won't be a big wedding celebration, and when he comes back on this marriage visa, that's when we'll have a wedding celebration for all our family and friends. My dad did say he'll possibly come to South Korea when I get legally married, but really I came to terms I'll be getting married alone and it doesn't bother me. My mom told me that we should get married Canada, but honestly we already have plans and I'm so excited to go to Osaka with him. Also, I feel like since the visa denial, I don't care about a wedding, I just want to sign the papers. I told my mom that we have plans for South Korea, but she pleaded with me to have it in Canada, since my parents can drive from New York, where we live, to there. I just told my mom I'm not sure if I want to, and then she started having a meltdown. She told me I can do this for her so she can be at my wedding. She then went on with how it's clear I don't want her at my wedding. She also threw in that I'm ruining Christmas if my dad goes to South Korea to watch me get married. There was a lot of other stuff she said, but this was the highlights of it. I mentioned this idea to my fiancé, and he understandably has concerns. He's worried about the legal aspect of this and other issues regarding his visa denial. Sure, both Canada and US is different from each other, but he seems worried about this and not comfortable with getting married there. I want to respect him and understand him more if there's something I'm missing. I tried telling my mom how he feels, and she shot it down and told me he can do this for them. She also said that he's not being respectful towards her for not being able to attend my marriage in South Korea. My mom agreed that we can speak to our immigration lawyer about this and contact the Canadian embassy or any type of officials about this. But with that, my fiancé still feels uncomfortable and has concerns. Even my brother said he can put some effort into coming here since I'm always going there. But that's not even what any of this about. I don't want to put my fiancé in deeper legal issues with trying to come back to the US so we can start our lives together. I'm also worried that I get 10 days of time off from work while my fiancé can get 4 days off. I'm worried that after we get married in Canada, he would have to go back to South Korea, and if I won't be able to join for that time period. If you know long distance, you know every moment together is so important. I don't want it just be 4 days and I have to drive back home with my parents. I don't know, I just feel stuck on what to do, and I don't know if I'm wrong for wanting to keep the existing plans in South Korea. Does that make me selfish towards my parents? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.